Lloyd Russell-Moyle.
Thank you, Sir Christopher, and thank you to the Right Honourable Member from Arundel and South Down for bringing this very important debate. Many of the things have been said already. I will, of course, come on to my trip with Results UK, of which I attended with the Honourable Member for Liverpool West Derby, and of which is in my register of interest. But just in the introduction to this speech, one person has already died from TB. 18 seconds pass for another person to die from TB around the world, and just in the UK alone, every other hour, someone will die from TB. This is a huge killer. With 6,000, I correct myself, every 2 hours someone in the UK will be infected with TB, with 6,000 cases. Very few people do die from TB in the UK because we have the treatment, and that is what I will come on to in a second. Yes. Important that I get that figure right. Because the real challenge is 99% of tuberculosis deaths occur in developing countries, because as we've heard, this is a disease of poverty. Yes. This is partly because of TB's intersection with other major issues, compounding particularly with other health conditions, and of course we've heard it remains one of the biggest causes of death worldwide. Now the SDGs say that we should try and tackle this in the next period, but at the current rate we would have to wait 160 years to eradicate TB and save 28 million lives that will be lost if we do not pick up the pace. Working towards the end of tuberculosis must mean that we engage with civil society, engage with communities, and in particular we must work with high-risk groups and other people who are particularly vulnerable. And most importantly, we must ensure there are universal, free-to-access health services. The best way, almost the only way, of tackling TB is through universal health, of which I will try and touch on in a second. Now, last year, 2017, the Honourable Member, my Honourable friend from Liverpool West Derby, and myself went to Liberia to visit the response particularly for drug-resistant tuberculosis, which, of course, is now represents a third of all deaths due to tuberculosis. There is treatment for drug-resistant tuberculosis, let's be very clear, but the side effects are gruelling. It is a 2-year course of medicine, of which there is only a 50% success rate. You are most likely to experience chronic nausea, psychosis, painful blistering on almost all your limbs, of which you will potentially scratch and cause further infection. You will have the real loss, you'll have the permanent loss of your hearing in one or maybe both ears, and after enduring it, you still only have a 50% chance of survival. And the real problem is the side effects of the drugs are so awful, and I think reading out the list here doesn't necessarily tell you how awful they are. If you are experiencing psychosis and experiencing painful blisters all over your body and experiencing nausea, vast numbers of people that we saw, of course, do not complete their course. They are sent back out into the community for the disease to spread. We saw the use of a gene expert machine. This is a machine that when someone comes in, you can take a sample, and rather than looking under a microscope, you take the sample and you see if it is drug resistant or not, and you treat immediately. The problem is, however, this machine costs $20 per person to use. And whilst in the capital, Monrovia, it was used, when we went out to the county hospitals, it was rarely, if ever, used. We went into a cupboard and we saw the machine packed away there, not plugged in, not being used, because $20 per test is just too high a cost.
Yeah.
So instead what they would do is do a traditional microscope test, of which you can't tell whether someone's got drug resistance or not. They would then work out they've got TB, give them the normal drug, send them back into the community for a few weeks. If no improvement happened, they would be brought back in for the gene expert machine test. The problem is, in all that time, the drug resistance has spread. Family members have got it, and the cost has increased. Now, if we cannot have early detection and treatment, more people will have to undergo that 2-year regime, more people will drop out, and more people will suffer so needlessly. And of course, drug-resistant TB is only a matter of time. If it is lost sufficiently in the developing world, it will end up coming to these shores as well, and we will suffer and we will struggle to deal with it just as much, because I can tell you, no British person either will suffer some of those side effects. So yes, we need immediate action for pharmaceutical development to find decent drugs that do not cause those side effects, but we also need to make sure we nip this in the bud. The Global Fund, as we have heard, of course, has great UK backing, and the UK has been one of the biggest backers of it, but it needs replenishment, and it needs it now. I hope the Minister will commit to that. I hope the Minister will commit to a redoubling of that. In 2015, amongst the people who tuberculosis was detected, reported and treatment for non-drug resistant TB, 80% were successfully cured. This fight can be won, but we must make sure that we reach out to those vulnerable groups, that we fund the research, and we ensure that everyone is able to access good, universal, free at the point of delivery healthcare to eradicate this once and for all.